My focus is to tell the truth and to give, everybody right now in my world, the political news world, I mean, you can't go on X without hearing that this one is fighting with this one and it's pro-Israel or I hate Israel. I mean, and meanwhile, none of that stuff is helping anybody pay the bills. It's not helping anybody get past the fact that they've got to pay $2,000 a month for Obamacare. And so what our team believes, and my team is my family. I have nobody on my team who is not with my same last name. So my 3 oldest kids work for me and my wife works with me. And so our thing is, we're not going to get into these BS noisy conversations. We're going to stick to what we know best. And that is, how do you solve the big problems that our country's facing? We're going to put it into short video format. We're going to hit you all day long with these videos. And if people want us, they'll keep with us. If we have a product that people don't want, well, then we'll have to shift to something else. But if you stay to what you feel in your heart, nobody's going to be able to hold you down. Look at you as an example. I don't know enough of your story, but I know enough to say that despite the fact that they kicked you off, they did the ugly things that they did, you didn't just say, well, I'm just going to quit and I'm going to open up a bakery. No, you said, I'm fighting this. I'm good at what I do. I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm going to do it, and you're not going to hold me down. And here you are. You just said they put you back up.
A quick break to share with you this wonderful product called Masterpiece. It is proven to taking out graphene oxide, aluminums, heavy metals, microplastics. They also are looking at these MAC addresses, and there's more and more research and there's studies coming out. There's 4 documentaries that are being made on their studies of how they're able to disable MAC addresses that are somehow put into people. This is amazing stuff. I highly recommend. I buy a whole box of it and I make sure my whole family has it. If you are interested in trying this and really cleaning up your body from microplastics, graphene oxide, you can also test yourself. You can get your hair tested, see what you are before and what you are after you use this for a few months. They stand behind what they're doing with tests, studies, and real results. And look for the link below where you can buy Masterpiece yourself. It'll provide you a discount, or you can go to sarahwestall.com under shop. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Dennis Michael Lynch coming to the program. For those of you who don't know who he is, he used to be a regular commentator on Fox News, and then he had his own show on Newsmax, and he was the top anchor on Newsmax, and he was fired live on air during his broadcast, and he's going to explain what happened there. This was back in 2016, but he has over 2 million followers on Facebook, and I asked him how he even does that and how did that work, and I got to the bottom of some of these things. He started a business with Sculley, who was the former CEO of Apple, who actually fired Steve Jobs. And I get to hear some of that, or we all get to hear some of the inside story on that. But I just wanted to have him on and talk about what the heck happened. Why was he fired on air? What was really happening behind the scenes and what he's doing today? I think you will find at least the stories and his insight pretty interesting. And we also talk about the future of the United States, big tech, and the global structure that's changed and how governance hasn't kept up. And I wanted his thoughts on that and the changing brains of kids, and how we're just not paying attention, and how it's changing the media landscape, but we're ignoring the reality of what it's doing to our kids and what does that mean. Okay, let's get into this interesting conversation with Dennis Michael Lynch. Hi, Dennis. Welcome to the program.
Sarah, it is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You have a really interesting background, going from being a commentator, or at least on Fox News a lot, and then you had your own show on Newsmax, and then you left it and you created these, millions of followers on Facebook. First of all, I don't know how anybody gets millions of followers on Facebook without being said. So you're going to need to tell that story. But you left Newsmax because this is what I'm being told, because they weren't allowing you to speak your mind, to talk about the truth. Yeah. So you created You created a consulting company with the former CEO of Apple. I mean, you've done a lot of inside, very powerful positions and working with people that gives you a different outlook. And then you decided to just leave and do it on your own. First of all, talk about your background, some of the key points of your background, and then I'm going to get into some of these fine details that I brought up.
Well, I'm going to give this in the flyby way, and if you want more detail on something, you can stop me. How does that sound?
Okay.
All right. So, for the most part, I graduated at the bottom of my high school class because I just hated learning inside of a classroom. I'm the kind of guy that if you show me how to do something, I'm going to perfect it, and then I'm really good at it. But if you make me sit down and read a book and try to explain to me that way, it's not going to work. So when I tried to go to college, it just didn't happen for me. And so I was pushed into the realm of go out and get a job and figure it out. And I met my wife on the first day of ninth grade, and I wanted to get married. I wanted to be with her. But at the same time, as you can't get married when you're making $10 an hour flipping pizzas. And that's what I was doing when I came out of high school. Yeah, it was a little tough. So that and cutting lawns on weekends. But I was always a hard worker.
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was always a hard worker. Work never scared me. It was just, I never found the value of being in a classroom and having somebody who I always felt couldn't make it on the outside teaching me things that were totally irrelevant. So,
well, just to make a point, most of the successful CEOs, at least would last like 15, 20 years ago when I looked, they had an average GPA of a 2 of a C.
Yeah.
Go ahead. They aren't. It's not what people think it is.
No, I mean, and even, you asked me about John Sculley, and he's the guy who famously fired Steve Jobs from Apple. And Steve Jobs, as far as I'm concerned, until Elon Musk came around, was the greatest entrepreneur this country has ever had. And he didn't go to college. He dropped out. So sort of like myself. But yeah, I started a computer company, and which is kind of weird because I've always been a jock. I mean, even as I'm sitting here, I wear my golf hat all the time. So if I'm not playing golf, I'm playing baseball. If not baseball, football, something as I'm growing up. And at some point, I realized in order to get married to my wife, Mary, I had to do something more. So I had a friend who had gotten into the computer business just when computers had started. And, they were still, you could buy a laptop for like $5,000 is one of those things. So I got into the computer business, and I wound up raising a lot of money during the .com era because I was one of the originators of doing transactions online. And in fact, those companies aren't even around anymore. There used to be a place called On Sale, which is good because I'll go back to that. But I mean, like online auctions and eBay and stuff of that nature. So I was one of the originators on there, and I was making tremendous money, and I raised a large amount of venture capital. And one of the venture capitalists was John Sculley, the former CEO of Apple and Pepsi. So it was because I was in the computer business, if you will, reselling things that were coming in off lease, it was a natural fit for him. And so he was on our board, whatever. And I wound up becoming sort of like, it was almost like an uncle-nephew sort of relationship. He didn't really have a son that he was tight with. My father wasn't really in my life. So I was always looking for that elder statesman, if you would. And he was sort of looking for somebody who would look up to him. And he was a little beat up after being fired from Apple. So it was just a perfect time.
Let me ask you, did he regret firing Jobs, or was Jobs needed that to grow?
I think if Steve Jobs was here to answer that question for himself, he would say, well, no, he did answer it for himself. He gave a great commencement speech. I think everybody needs to listen to Steve Jobs' commencement speech given at Stanford. I mean, if you're in business or if you're looking to achieve something in life and you want somebody to give you a 15-minute magical speech, that's the speech. And I still, to this day, I quote things from that speech. John Sculley said, you need to watch this, when I was kind of waffling myself. But I mean, what happened there, without getting too deep, is that Steve Jobs was like in the wild, wild west. And he didn't care much about how much things were costing. He just wanted to create. And so they brought in Sculley because he was very, very effective back. You're too young for this, but we had a thing called the Cola Wars between Pepsi and Coke. And
I remember that. Was he?
You remember that?
Was he the one? Yeah. Was he the one that was in charge when that whole thing went down?
He created that. So it was all him.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you want to talk about business. So John taught me always to go against the grain, always to think out of the box. If everybody's going to the left, figure out how you could go to the right without going in the wrong direction, And so
Don't follow the herd, but don't be stupid either. Yeah.
yeah, so I'll give you a very interesting story, especially for your business people. They'll appreciate this. So, just in the same way that you have the Nielsen ratings for television, right? You have the Nielsen ratings for Coca-Cola sales and pops, soda sales. And so Coca-Cola was always beating Pepsi. And back then, your mom would be able to tell you when you bought a Coke bottle, it was the classic glass bottle. Mm-hmm. And so Nielsen would measure success based on bottles sold. And Pepsi could never catch their tail. So what John came up with was, let's come up with a bigger bottle, 32 ounces. We'll do plastic because moms didn't like the fact that the glass bottles would break a lot. So it'll be more durable. And we'll get Nielsen to look at this differently to measure total volume sold, how many ounces versus how many bottles. And so Nielsen bought this theory, and then they did the blindfold taste test. And before you know, Pepsi took over Coke. So it was, John said, let's just think of packaging this differently. And that's what I'm doing in my business now.
Even if you, let's say if you sold, if Coke was selling 150 bottles and Pepsi was selling 125, they just upped the ounces and then it was a big illusion.
They changed the bottling.
Yeah.
So, right. So you were selling 150 bottles. I'm selling only 100 bottles, right? But if you take your 150 and times it by 8 ounces, and I take my 100 and times it by 32 ounces, I'm going to win the game. So what John would call that was changing the ground rules.
Well, and Nielsen, if they were smart and understood what was happening, they wouldn't have done that. But back then, it was brilliant.
It was brilliant. It was totally brilliant. Like I said, it's thinking out of the box. And so that was the way John Sculley thought. That was the way Steve Jobs thought. And so Steve Jobs hired John Sculley because of that whole Pepsi challenge thing. And when John went in, he saw that, Steve Jobs was sort of like this unbridled, unbelievable entrepreneur. And at some point, the board wanted Steve Jobs gone. And John didn't want to do it, but he fell weak. And I think he would say it's the greatest mistake he's ever made.
Really?
And so he fired him, and it backfired on John. I mean, John did grow Apple 10 times to what it was without Steve Jobs there. But when they eventually brought him back in, because John Sculley got fired, they brought in another guy. He sucked. And then that's when they went back to Jobs. So Jobs will tell you in that speech I'm talking about, he says at the time it was publicly humiliating. It was the worst thing that ever happened to him. But in hindsight, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to him because it grew him into a different guy. So
you need that friction to grow.
Yeah. I mean, look, in order to be able to be a winner, you need to be able to be a loser, right? Because you could have 10 losses in a row and then all of a sudden have the one win. And I mean, that's how I've made my money. I mean, as we get deeper into this conversation, I'll give you the examples.
You need some wins. I would say what I would push back a little bit is if all you do is lose, you don't develop the confidence. So you need a healthy combination of losing and winning.
I will agree with that. I think over the course of time, absolutely. But most entrepreneurs at the very beginning are going to have losses, especially if you're entering a space that you don't necessarily understand at first. And so it definitely helps you grow. But you are right. If you try 20 times in a row and you fail 20 times, most people aren't going to have the kind of gumption it takes to go to the 21st. So having a win here and a win there is definitely an important part. You're correct there.
And don't you think that identifying the entrepreneurs that were doing the right things, it's just a really good venture capitalist, tell me if I'm wrong here, would look at the patterns of the entrepreneur and say, okay, they're doing some things right. There are little things here and there, or they just didn't calculate something nobody knew about. And so they see the patterns, they see the potential in somebody. And so they invest in that versus, because so many of them will just look at the success rate, invest in that. And sometimes the worst person to invest in is somebody who just got lucky.
Listen, so you're really going into a lot of worlds that I know. When I raised my money, John Sculley being one of those people, John and his brother, who was the CEO of Heinz, they took me to dinner. And I had already raised, I was looking for a $13 million raise, and I had already gotten 10. And the main guy who was underwriting most of it, he said, look, you've already got the money. Now you just got to get the other people the strategic money in. And I said, okay, fine. So he says, you're going to go to dinner with this guy named John Sculley. I didn't even know who he was at the time. And so my brother-in-law said to me, do you have any idea who we're going to dinner with? I said, no, I have no idea. He says, and he told me the whole story. So I said, all right. So we go to dinner.
It's better not to know, but go ahead.
It was better not to know. So I didn't get that chill factor, where you're sitting in front of somebody that, intimidates you because they're greatness. And so when we went to dinner, John Sculley was asking me 50,000 questions about my personal life. And I said to him, John, at some point, are you going to ask me about my business? And he says, no. He says, I'm really not. He says, because I know that the other guys did the waterfall chart on everything and they know the ins and outs. He goes, I don't invest in companies. I invest in people. And I was like, whoa, okay. And he says, any good venture capitalist will put their money into a person versus just a concept. So yes, I mean, and I've always held my way as an investor, looking at the person versus looking at the numbers. A podcast would be a perfect example, right? So somebody comes to me and says, we're only getting 1,000 downloads. And I say, that's okay, because your personality is off the charts. You just need a little exposure. I'll put my money into this because I'm putting my money on you, not so much your program. So that's what I've learned over the course of time, and that's what John taught me. And so we did that for a while, and then I sold off my parts of my computer business. We did okay. And then John invited me to be a partner with him in a consulting firm in Manhattan. And that led to me having this beautiful, huge office that overlooked the Twin Towers. And so I was in Manhattan that day. I saw the first plane crash into the building.
You got to see it firsthand?
Oh, I got to run from it firsthand because I was down. It just so happened to be I was down at the exchange, the stock exchange that day with some buddies who worked on the commodities exchange. So when the buildings collapse, I'm one of the people you see running in the street with the soot in his hair.
Oh, geez. And did you get to see some of the people jumping? I mean,
I got to see all of the people jumping.
That's all. I mean, that was awful. I mean, I still remember the people who were desperately looking for their loved ones. God, was that hard to watch for day after day.
Well, I remember, there's, in fact, my hair always raises on my arm every time I talk about this. But when it was happening, it felt more like I was watching a movie because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And even though the person or the many people that I was seeing was 80 stories high, it was almost as if I felt like I could see their face. Mm-hmm. It was so vivid. And, they're waving their shirts and white flags or whatever. And then, when you see the first person jump, I mean, it took my breath away. And I like to believe I'm a pretty tough guy. And I just started crying. And then when the first person just leans over, they just lean over, you say to yourself, my goodness, that if that is the better of all the deaths possible at that moment, that's how bad it was up there. And so that was a big change for me because up to that point, being in the computer business wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was money. And it was something that led me to be able to get married and say I was making enough money.
Your wife made you, did she give you an ultimatum? Did she say you need to make money or get your act together, otherwise I'm not going to marry you? Or are you just saying this for the podcast? She didn't do that to you, did she?
No. She didn't do it. Her parents did.
Oh, okay.
She
I can see that. Her parents going, okay,
yeah.
I know, honey, you love this guy, but he's kind of a schmuck.
Yeah, I mean, when you're together from ninth grade, I mean, we were best friends, still are today, best friends, and obviously in love. But, her parents, obviously, I mean, my wife graduated who's who in college, which means 4.0 and, off the charts. And here I am, I'm cutting lawns and flipping pies. So it was one of those, so it was one of those things. Yeah, it's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, all right, I got to come up with something. And like I said, I fell into the computer business, and I'm the kind of guy, if I get into something, I want to make it number one. And if it's not number one, then I'm not going to get into it. And so at that given time, I got into a business that was lucrative because computers were new, but I had no interest in it whatsoever. I was just purely doing it for money. And then when you live something like 9/11 and you have the guidance of somebody like John Sculley, who sits there and says to me after 9/11, you need to get out of here. And I say, well, why? He goes, because you weren't born to be a consultant. You were born to be like a Steve Jobs. You want to change the world. You want to go out and do things. You're going to melt in here. Get out. And so, he sort of kicked me out the door, and I appreciate that. It's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. And if you think about it, he's basically fired two people in his life, Steve Jobs and me, for the same reason, right? You got to go out. You're meant to fly, not sit. And so I went to film school because I always either wanted to be a baseball player or a filmmaker. And I was too old at that point, 30 years old, to play ball. And I had 3 kids. So I went out and I went to film school for 5 weeks and learned everything I possibly could about creating films. And I thought originally I'd wind up going to Hollywood. And then, to believe it or not, in my first film called King of the Hamptons, I actually had Billy Joel, Christy Brinkley, a whole bunch of stars. But I met Alec Baldwin. And I'm a conservative. He's a liberal. And we just clashed. And I said, if this is what I got to deal with in Hollywood, I'm never going to last. And fast forwarding the story, which is really, really, I think it's God sent, is that I used to have to pass this guy standing on the corner of a 7-Eleven in Southampton, New York, every day going out to film King of the Hamptons. And he would stand there with a sign that said, deport illegals. And I never really knew anything about illegal immigration. I knew nothing. I wasn't political or anything at the time. But what I saw was every day, Sarah, whether it was 10 below zero or 110 degrees, he was there every day for years. And people would either throw coffee at him and give him the middle finger, or they'd honk with encouragement. So one day I pulled over and I said, dude, what's your deal? I've been seeing you out here forever.
Yeah, what's the deal?
And the reason why I asked that, Sarah,
that's great.
Well, truth be told, it wasn't my attempt to be heroic. It was in film school, they teach you, if you ever see something so unique that you think would make a great film, don't let it pass you by. And so I said, this guy's a film. And so I pulled over, and he explained to me that he had this unbelievable business of 25 employees building homes in the Hamptons, which is pretty extravagant. And that eventually he just lost it all because, the open borders started in the early 2000s under George Bush, and literally he couldn't compete. So they came and he repossessed everything. He lost his wife. He lost his kids. And so he ended up protesting on that corner for about 20 years. He just left recently when Trump finally got the borders closed. And so I wound up making a film called They Come to America. And I couldn't get it out on film festivals despite it being just phenomenal. And it was because I didn't realize at the time, film festivals have a far left bent. And so my film didn't have a left bent. I didn't look at it from the perspective of, oh, these poor people are coming here for a better life. I looked at it as, boy, this is costing American citizens a lot.
Quick break from the program to share with you something amazing. This is called Sloop. It's actually SLUPP-332, but it's been shortened to Sloop. And this thing mimics exercise. It seems too good to be true. I first shared this on my Substack, and I had Dr. Diane Kaiser, and we went through all the benefits of this, and the whole thing sold out. You can't get it anywhere really across the industry. And the people who are using it the most are athletes and bodybuilders and people who want to see extra performance in athletics, because this and preclinical studies with mice increased their endurance by 70% and their distance by 45%. I mean, it's incredible. And it's been shown to mimic exercise even when you're at rest. In preclinical studies with obese mice, they lost upwards of 12% of their body weight in 4 weeks, and it increased muscle. So this is really taking the industry by storm. It's actually not that expensive either. With my 10% coupon, it's about $80 for maybe a 2-month supply if you take 1 capsule a day. If you decide to up it to 2 capsules a day, because your dosage depends on what you want, then it's a 1-month supply. But Dr. Diane recommends doing 1 capsule a day until your body gets used to it. You might not see the same level of results right away that the mice did, but your body can get used to it and see if it's something that you really want to do. If you are interested in this, I will have a link below so you can try it yourself, or go to sarahwestall.com under shop. Remember to use the code Sarah to save 10%. I got to ask you what you felt when you have a intense drive to be really good at what you're doing, and
Hmm.
you know that you have really good stuff, and you run
Hmm.
across the left or the a different ideal of it has nothing to do with what you're how good you are,
Yeah.
and they block you. There's this wall. It's like the glass ceiling, right?
Hmm.
You essentially reached the glass ceiling because of the politics of the left.
Yeah.
How did that make you? I mean, I'm sure it got back to like with Steve Jobs being fired or whatever. It's that same concept. You went through
Yeah.
hell. Explain how you dealt with that.
That is a phenomenal question, and the reason why it is because you just gave me a chill. Um, yeah, when I made that first film, They Come to America, I put my life at risk. I was in danger many times down at the Arizona border, and back in those days, illegal immigration was out there. But if you watched Fox News, all you did is you what's called B-roll. It's the visual you see on TV as somebody's talking. And they would always play the same B-roll of like one Border Patrol agent chasing two people. And that's what I thought it was. And it wasn't. I mean, I went face to face with cartel, and I wasn't expecting any of that stuff. And so when I was done with the film, I told my wife, my God, we have an Oscar-worthy film here. It's the best thing of all time. And Ed Burns, who is an actor in Hollywood, I knew him from my first movie, and he's liberal. But when he watched it, he told me this is going to go nowhere. And I said, why? What are you talking about? It's going nowhere. He says, it's not. This is something you'd see on Fox News. I'm like, Fox News? What are you talking? I don't even watch Fox News. So when I started sending it out to film festivals, you name the film festival, I sent it. It got rejected time and time again. Even the Hamptons International Film Festival, which had my first film, King of the Hamptons. And when I asked people, they said that it was a racist film. And I've never been a racist. I mean, I've hired people in my computer company. My first guy was a black guy from Trinidad. And I just like, wait, racist? What are you talking racist? And so that was my first exposure to it. And it hurt. It hurt when somebody would call me a racist. I would say, like I just said to you, what are you talking about? I have friends that are black. I have friends that are Latino. And you start defending. I don't do that anymore. I'm just telling you the story. But I mean, if somebody says that now, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever you say. I'm not going to fall for that. You do that so this way I don't give you the facts. And so it hurt. It hurt big time because I put my money, my energy, and I risked my life to try to tell people about what was happening to our country. And it was very important to me because I was still going off the passion of 9/11. And I'm like, oh my God, we're leaving our borders open. Terrorists are going to come through here. And at that time, nobody even talked that way. But so I was really the first guy to ever go do that. And when I got rejected, and this is one of the things you're talking about before about having failure, I got rejected, and you could really say it was a failure. But what it did was it opened the door for a completely different career, which wound up being something I never even expected, because my neighbor at the time is a guy named Brian Kilmeade, who hosts Fox and Friends on Fox News. And I went, I knocked on his door, and I said, Bri, I said, you know Ed Burns, the actor? He said, yeah. He says my film should be on Fox News. I can't get it anywhere else. I told him the story about being rejected. He said, give me a trailer. I gave him a trailer. The next day, Roger Ailes from Fox News said, book him. And so I was on Fox News, and before you know it, I became the immigration expert on Fox News. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll be the immigration expert.
You
and
never
then,
in a million years thought that's what you would be. You
Never.
became that, though.
No, I became that. And you want to know, from a business perspective, if I was given a speech to new entrepreneurs, I would say the business that you have in your mind right now is probably not the business that you're ultimately going to have, because things will morph and things will change. And if you've got this unbridled passion, you're going to become something. And then, you got to understand when opportunity knocks, even if it knocks softly. And so here I am, I'm on Fox News, and then all of a sudden my email's blowing up with people asking me if I'll give speeches after my very first time being on Fox. And I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah. So what I did was I called back up Ed Burns. I said, how do I monetize this? And he said, sell DVDs. And so then I would go on Fox, and then they'd let me sell DVDs at the end of every episode. I'd be like, hey, if people go to theycometoamerica.com, they could get a copy of the DVD. I said, and I'll send you one for free So this way you can send the message to somebody else. And that just friggin' when you involve the outside to be part of your messaging, they will spend their money all day long. And but for me, it was more of, it wasn't about, I wasn't looking to make money per se, because I had already made money. I was so pissed that my movie was being silenced that I said, how do I get this out?
They pissed off the wrong person, right? Which is what they did, I think, over the last 10 years. They've been pissing off the wrong people, being honest. They've been pissing off some pretty good people who really are good at what they do. And I think they're starting to wake up to what they're...
Well, they are, and I think Trump is a big part of it, and I appreciate that because he says what he means and he means what he says in most cases. But I mean, it's sort of one of those things where if you get in his way, if Facebook gets in his way, if X gets in his way, if somebody gets in his way, he's going to take you to court, and then he's going to expose you. Nobody wants to have that. So, I mean, just getting to the fast forward about, you're asking about Facebook.
Yeah, how the heck did you get, because I mean, I can't get any traction there. I haven't gotten kicked off, but not because I never really used it much. But go ahead.
So there's a formula here. So I mean, I was on Fox News for years, and then Megyn Kelly became the primetime show, and I was on with her all the time. And so on social media at that point, I went from having maybe 10,000 followers to now, when I was on Megyn, I went up to probably about like 100,000 followers. So I'm starting to get some traction. Mm-hmm. And then I changed gears. That's another whole story. It takes too long, but Newsmax asked me to come over, and they said that they called me the tent pole. They wanted to build their whole TV around me. So I was going to be sort of the Bill O'Reilly. Yeah, I was going to be the Bill O'Reilly of Newsmax. And so I did that at the time of the 2016 election. I was the #1 show. There wasn't even a close #2. And it turned out to be that, I didn't realize this, but the founder of Newsmax, although he sells it as a conservative network, he was a $1 million donor to the Clinton Foundation. And I didn't know this. I had no idea when I took that spot. And so what was happening was that every time I went to go book a guest that was a anti-Hillary, a writer of a book of some kind, I would always be told I couldn't have that guest on. And when you're the #1 show and you're the tent pole, whether you're Bill O'Reilly or Dennis Michael Lynch or, what's his name, Joe Rogan for Spotify, you don't get told no. And when you get told no, you're like, why? And then I found out that he was a Clinton donor. And so we had a spat, and on live television, I was telling people that he would not allow me to have guests on because of that. And they literally, in prime time, pulled the plug. So the screen went black. And they whispered in my ear from the booth,
You're
Dennis,
fired.
Dennis, you're not on anymore, and security's coming to remove you from the building. I was like, okay. So then here comes the Facebook part. So at that point in time, if you leave Fox and you go to Newsmax, you're never back on Fox again. That's kind of the rule. It's
So you kind of hosed yourself with Fox. You hosed yourself with Newsmax.
I really did. You know,
It is.
It is. In retrospect, had I not left Fox, it very well would have been that I would have been maybe a Tucker Carlson. I would have been an own prime time. Jesse Waters. But that was a mistake, and that was
Jesse
youth.
Waters. I got to tell you, I'm not a big fan, but
you and me both.
Is he just I'm just not liking him. But go ahead.
You and me both. But I mean, the point was, I would probably have been in that primetime slot with my own show, and but I didn't want to wait. And at Fox News, you got to pay your dues. You know, they always hire from within, but you got to pay your dues. And I didn't want to wait. I was too aggressive, and I said, you know what? I'll take my own show at Newsmax. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because now I don't have Fox. Now I don't have Newsmax. And it's 3 months before the 2016 election. And at the time, my name was really getting out there hugely, because I was one of the first guys to ever jump onto the Trump train. And so one day I'm going to the gym, and I had grabbed my daughter's phone on mistake. And I opened it up or whatever, and we all share the same passwords. I had opened it up, and there was Facebook badge on there. And so I said, you know what? I keep on seeing the commercial for Facebook Live. Let me do this thing. So I open up and I do a Facebook Live, and I have about 20,000 people. And I'm like, wow, this is great. And I have my hat on, and at the time my hair was long, so it was really sticking up and this and that. So it looked a little crazy. And so I was talking pro-Trump. And before you know it, Sarah, between August 13th is when I started to the election in November, I had over 100 million shares of all my videos.
Wow.
And so I went from 200,000 people following me to 1.2, 1.3 million. And so I became
It was
like
just Facebook, right? At this point.
just Facebook.
And you were never deleted off Facebook, because I had pretty good success on YouTube and I just got back there like a couple weeks ago. But I was canceled 2020. I lost for 5 years. I wasn't back. And everything, it was across the board, every single platform, unpersoned me. I wrote an article about being unpersoned. How did you avoid that?
I didn't, Sarah. So here's the crazy part, right? So at the time that Trump got elected, for a few months there, the left was trying to figure out how it happened. And of course, they were blaming Russia, which turned out to be BS. And then they finally figured out that it was the likes of Facebook, because Facebook was giving platform to people like me with absolutely no restrictions. Like I said, I would do a Facebook Live with 20,000 people, 100 million shares. That's unprecedented. So what wound up happening was
100 million shares, not just
100
views.
million shares.
Wow. Okay.
In a 3-month period.
Wow.
100 million shares. Okay. So what wound up happening was that all of a sudden my growth went block. And then on X, which was Twitter then, blocked.
Yeah, they blocked it overnight. Everything's blocked. Bam.
Everything was blocked. Everything was blocked. I wasn't kicked off because I never said anything that would have kicked me off, but I got blocked. And I wound up getting put on a list as being a Russian propagandist. And I don't know.
Why didn't you get kicked off? See, that's what I don't understand is not that
I was
I
too
think you
big.
should have.
Yeah.
But the 15 of us that sued Google, we had higher numbers than the mainstream media combined. I mean, we were doing, and so in some ways they hosed themselves because they kicked us off. We all moved to other platforms and all these other platforms got built up. They took away the market share when it comes to this realm. So in a way they kind of hosed themselves, but they admitted after the fact that I didn't do anything wrong. And I've got that on their top legal attorney letterhead that you are not violating policies and we're going to bring you back.
Well, the difference between what happened to you and the timing of when it happened to you and what happened to me and the timing of what happened to me is timing. So back then, Facebook was the only really show in town that would give you a live platform. YouTube was still the cat in the tree video. Podcasts hadn't really been formed yet, and YouTube wasn't a place where you would go to have a 1-hour show.
It was a couple years later.
Yeah. So the timing was Facebook was the big deal. Twitter was just coming up and new. YouTube wasn't ever thought of as a political place. It was always user content, if you will. And so, there was no Instagram or anything. So my timing was, and my focus was all in one place. And then I reluctantly went onto YouTube and X, or Twitter at the time. But to put this into perspective for you, 2017 is when that hammer dropped, where Facebook kind of kept me on but cut me off. And when I was put on a list that I was a Russian propagandist, I was actually, you may recall the Twitter files. You remember the Twitter files? Matt Taibbi did it all right. I'm in Twitter files number 15. I did not know until just last year that I was on that list. And it answered everything for me, because from the time that I'm talking about 2017 to about a year ago with the Matt Taibbi stuff and then Trump getting reelected, I did not have one person growth in any of those places. So at the time I had 1.3 million people on Facebook. 10 years later, I got 1.3 million. I had 30,000 people on YouTube. I had 30,000 on YouTube. And Twitter, I just even canceled my account and started again. Yeah. So then I found out why. So then when Trump came back in, then it was like the doors opened. I haven't given anything to YouTube in terms of effort. I've put all my effort back into where my success was, which was Facebook. And now the answer is, if you want to know where the magic would be for you, is Facebook and all of these companies are trying to become TikTok. So notwithstanding Elon, who wants to be town square, each one of these places is putting their money into the idea that this format that you and I are doing right now, they don't think it's going to be the format long term. They think the format's going to be the 1 minute video. And so what we've
I
done,
think that's a mistake, but go ahead.
well, we're going with that wave. So what we've done is we've gone down the path of, okay, we're not going to try to compete with Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. I'm too far behind because, you know, for me to come back, the other thing too is I stepped away from this whole media thing for years.
Well,
I got frustrated.
I think Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are platformed. I think there's more going on there. I don't think they just.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
I don't think it's organic. For example, how did I get on Tucker Carlson's newsletter when I never signed up for it? Everyone suddenly is on his newsletter. Those kinds of things. That's being platformed. It's kind of like Patreon, or not Patreon, Substack. Suddenly all these big name guys that were on these MSNBC get fired from there, and they have this massive 700,000 people newsletter, and suddenly overnight have this following. They never had that. That's BS. There's more going on here.
I don't know if I agree with you about Megyn and Tucker, because I know how both of them.
I'm not saying Megyn, I don't know, but I know I was suddenly on Tucker's email list and I never signed up.
Well, I'm not a fan for either one of them right now, to be quite honest. I just think that their focus is so lost. But I mean, there are other names, I prefer not to say them, younger people who have overnight become like White House sensations, and they've got 4 million on this platform and 5 million on that platform. And I say, how did that happen? I believe that there is a push in certain ways, but ultimately,
well, come on, you know the background. You know, algorithmically, you can create anybody you want. You can suppress anybody you want. You can do whatever you want now, and it's not organic anymore. Period. End of story.
I agree with you 100%. But to that degree, I've always been very successful at seeing the train before you can see the train. All right. I can hear it coming. And so I truly believe that the problem that we have, you have, I have, even Tucker has, Joe Rogan may be an anomaly, but unfortunately, the attention span of people, because there is such a proliferation of so much content and much of it all the same, I believe that the person who can dominate the short form storytelling is going to wind up being the next skyrocket. And so I'm putting my money and my time on the short side of things. I don't like it. I like this. In fact, you know, we both have a familiar friend in the booking world. And I've said to that friend, I only want to be booked on long form. I did TV forever. I'm not looking for the 3-4 minute hit. So by definition, Sarah, I don't like the idea of doing short 1 minute videos. But I can tell you, even though I have tremendous success on Facebook again, if I post to Facebook a picture and with a little description, or a news story with a little description, it will go nowhere. But if I post the same story in a 1 minute video, it will go viral, which says to me that Facebook is saying, we don't want any more of that photograph stuff. We'll give it to you because people expect it. But man, you keep on giving me small little videos, we're going to shine a light on you. And so that is where I see things going. And we're putting all of our time into that. But if you think about how this conversation started about failure and lack of success, whether that failure is brought on by your own mistakes or by the dirtiness of the pool being played in the background that you and I never discover. 10 years I'm on a list that I don't even know about, that I shouldn't even have been on. I don't even use Russian dressing on my salad, let alone talk to anybody Russian. I have no idea how they came up with that. I'm a guy on a cell phone walking around talking about what I know.
But that's the thing. It's like these lists, you don't even know what list you're on. I have to be on some list because my website was taken down by GoDaddy because the Federal Crimes Division took it down. I'm like, what? Well, GoDaddy's employees helped me get my domain name back. It went back up, and nobody ever came after me. So, but you can't have that kind of thing happen without being on a list somewhere. And what list am I on? You know?
And the crazy thing is that if you listen to what you're saying there, what happened to you, and if you listen to what I'm saying happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of people, that is not the America that I was raised
That's
in.
not. Absolutely not. No.
And so, I think that's one of the reasons why. I mean, if it's just the title of your show, right? Why is it that we have such a lack of people starting new businesses? Why do we have youngsters voting for socialists? And the reason being is because youngsters no longer trust our system. They don't believe in it. They don't believe that there is an American dream and that you could be an entrepreneur and the sky is the limit. They say, no, it's the rich and powerful that do it. People control you. You make it too expensive for me. You're trying to keep me down. So if you're going to do that, I might as well take the free token.
Well, and this algorithmic stuff that I'm seeing actually makes you kind of believe that too, because if there's no more organic growth and no more organic anything, then they kind of are right? I mean, so how do we take that back?
You said the word before. You still there?
I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay, I lost you on my screen. Hold on. You said the word before. I must have hit a button. I know this is going to screw you up for editing. All right, I'm going to go without looking at you. You said before about doing things really good. I'm going to correct you on that. I suggest being great at one thing. If there's one mistake I watch people do today, and that's kind of like what I'm doing with Facebook right now. There's YouTube, there's X, there's Instagram, there's WhatsApp, there's TikTok, there's Facebook, there's Threads. I mean, there's so many different things. And some people, whether it's from platforming, luck of the Irish, I have no idea what it is. They've got a big, huge crowd on all of it. And my sense is, I don't need to be Joe Rogan. In fact, I don't know if I'd want to be him because there's so much stress on that. I don't want to be Tucker Carlson. I think he's got a bullseye on his back. And I don't want to have to go traveling everywhere to kiss somebody's ass. So this way I get invited to the next party. I'm just going to be great at shorts on Facebook. And from a dollar standpoint, I'm probably going to make enough money to where I could say, hey, this is worth my time. I'd rather be the greatest guy on Facebook than a good guy on a bunch of different platforms. And so I think one of the things that this whole social media, nanosecond life, AI driven that we're living in, I think it has created a situation to where people lose focus. And in my day, when I grew up, focus was everything, no matter what it is that you focused on. And I think if people focus on it and they stay true to it and they go through the hard knocks, it will be impossible not to make you a success.
And your focus is going to be the shorts, and it's working for you.
Well, yes and no, Sarah. My focus is to tell the truth and to give, everybody right now in my world, the political news world. I mean, you can't go on X without hearing that this one is fighting with this one and it's pro-Israel or I hate Israel. I mean, and meanwhile, none of that stuff is helping anybody pay the bills. It's not helping anybody get past the fact that they've got to pay $2,000 a month for Obamacare. And so what our team believes, and my team is my family. I have nobody on my team who is not with my same last name. So my 3 oldest kids work for me and my wife works with me. And so our thing is, we're not going to get into these BS noisy conversations. We're going to stick to what we know best. And that is, how do you solve the big problems that our country's facing? We're going to put it into short video format. We're going to hit you all day long with these videos. And if people want us, they'll keep with us. If we have a product that people don't want, well, then we'll have to shift to something else. But if you stay to what you feel in your heart, nobody's going to be able to hold you down. Look at you as an example. I don't know enough of your story, but I know enough to say that despite the fact that they kicked you off, they did the ugly things that they did, you didn't just say, well, I'm just going to quit and I'm going to open up a bakery. No, you said, I'm fighting this. I'm good at what I do. I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm going to do it, and you're not going to hold me down. And here you are. You just said they put you back up.
Just a quick break from the program. I need to share with you in urgent manner about scam gold IRAs and the important need to make sure that you're working with a trusted company in the precious metal space. I have had hundreds of people come to me now where they have lost 50, 60, 70% of their life savings in these scam gold IRAs. We are having nearly 100% success rate getting their money back. If you have put your life savings into a gold IRA, I implore you to look and see if you have been scammed. Don't trust the company that sold it to you. Make sure you understand what you can get as a buyback value for the gold or silver that you have in your IRA. If you have noticed a significant drop in what you invested, you have more than likely been scammed. We can help you, and there's no shame. Go to sarahwestall.com/MilesFranklin, fill out that form, and we will help you get your life savings back. Well, they probably messed with the wrong person in the sense that if you're going to do that, then I'm going to fight harder.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like, but I'm going to be honest, you know, it's hard to get up every day and know that the world has shifted in that direction and understand what that means to society at large. You know, I have a lot of scientists and people that come on, and what I don't like about the shorts, although I completely get why you're doing that, what I don't like is that it's changing the brain structure of our children, and that it's that we're not consciously paying attention to what it's doing to human development. I had a pediatric neurologist come on. It was just aired recently. And he was explaining the difference of your brain, you know, his father and his brain and our brains compared to the young, and that their brain development is actually different, and they don't have the ability to focus like they used to. And that it's incredibly important that we recognize that using these AI tools, they're not developing the brain capacity to do the things that frankly society needs them to be able to do. And so we almost need to take a step back and go, what are we actually part of consciously, and what is it that we want? Because we're developing a whole generation of people that can't functionally do things. And so so that's what saddens me, is watching this reaction from the left, or even the right. The right's doing the same things now, because now I'm just seeing the other side. It's the extremes that are doing it, right? I think there's a huge middle part of our country that are all kind of coming to the same conclusions, like, what the hell is going on here? But watching the reactions of the extremes, and with these new tool sets, they're able to implement their extremes with these tools. They couldn't do that before. And so now we're blatantly being able to see the behavior of the extremes in our face. And it saddens me, because unless the average people don't rise up and start saying enough, we're going to have these young ones, their brain development, their social development, everything about their development is fundamentally changing them. And we are going to be paying the price probably for centuries.
We could do this. We could do this conversation for 5 hours. I mean, it's the
reality of what we're facing.
Yeah, I've had similar doctors on my shows. One guy, Dr. K, is a good buddy of mine. He wrote a book called Glow Kids. And he said to me, Dennis, he says, these kids with the phone 6 inches in front of their face, he said, it is the equivalent as if they were doing cocaine. And I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, the frontal cortex. And he started going down this whole thing. Listen, I don't disagree with you. I go back to what I said before. You know, I told the girl who books me, get me on long form. The problem is that if you and I and everybody else just keeps on rejecting what the world is shaping itself into, we're gonna fall flat. And so where I've come down to figure where my space is that I've always been a truth teller. I mean, it's one reason why people who have followed me, Sarah, I was just showing the other day that I've shown it to our mutual friend. I have one woman who got my Team DML tattooed on her arm. I mean, people have named their dogs after me. I mean, it's just
Really?
yes.
Oh,
And the
wow.
reason why that is because they know that they could always trust me. So I've always made trust my big thing. And I voted for Trump 3 times. But when he does something that I think is absolutely asinine, there are so many different big names out there who will ignore that he did it because they don't want to piss off or lose a follower, or they'll spin it with like an apology before they criticize it. I don't give a rat's ass. If you want to unfollow me because I'm telling you you've got a spot on your shoulder and that's cancer growing because you don't want to have the truth, then I'm not your doctor. But when I have the president tell me that 600,000 Chinese students should be coming in because woke colleges are going to otherwise go out of business, and then in the same breath say that we need to take in more H-1B visas because we don't have a talent pool here in the United States, I say, like my ass, I'm not going to agree with that. When you have a terrorist from Syria, the president of Syria was a 13-year Al-Qaeda leader with $10 million bounty on his head. You're going to have him. You're going to normalize this guy. I'm going to scream, especially as somebody who lived 9/11. So you may not get as many followers on Dennis Michael Lynch's page as you will, let's just say, somebody like Benny Johnson, right? I won't get his follower count, but I'm going to get the person who's going to stay with me for 20 years because they know that if I say something, it's true. So if I put that into a 1-minute reel or a 1:30 reel or a 3-minute reel, I never go more than 3 minutes in most cases, somebody's going to say, what's Dennis saying? And at least I can get their attention and make them think, even if it's just a flyby thought, other than saying, hey, you got to listen to my 1-hour show and I'm going to teach you everything there is about H-1B visa. Unfortunately, to your point, Sarah, they should want to know everything about H-1B visa because it's going to impact them negatively. But if I don't have their attention, okay, I'm going to give you the elevator pitch. You got 2 minutes. Give it to me. And, you know, if you're in sales, you got to have an elevator pitch. And that's what I'm doing.
I would say 2 things. I would say, I don't know if being that big is worth it because you're selling your soul. So I think that's what you're saying. And that's what I've been saying too, is and my husband he's such a rock for me. It's like, it's not worth it. And I agree with that. It's just not worth it. The other part is I've been doing a conference presentation. I've changed it up, but essentially the same theme for years now, that the structure of the world has changed. The big cap market companies are all big tech. Everything has changed, and the structure of our governance has not. And we're screwed because we haven't caught up to what's really happening. And even the independent media that is starting to address it, the technocracy, although they're looking at like writings from 40 years ago and all these things and mapping it directly to technocracy, I think they're just looking at a slice of reality as well. And I think the problem is that the majority of the people just don't have the skill set to govern in this new landscape that we're in. And what you're saying is we have to understand the landscape we're in, and we have to use those kits to build what we need to build. And so I'm agreeing with you while also saying we also need to keep in the back of our mind how we deal with these additional issues and use those toolkits to then change. We can't allow us to be in this stupid situation forever. And so we have to acknowledge it and get creative about solving these problems, because we are entering into a sand pit, a quicksand pit that we won't be able to get out of unless we start at least addressing what the reality is, while still using the tool sets.
Yeah, I don't think, just basically because I understand time is against both of us here. I should have just explained also to you that, what we do is I do these short videos, but I also do a long form. So my thought is that, if I could get 100 people, and I'm using the number 100, it could be 100,000, I don't care. If I get 100 people and at least 95 of them will listen to my short commentary, well, maybe I could get the other 5 to say, not only do I want to hear short commentary, but I also want to hear his long commentary.
Yep.
And so that's ultimately the plan, is to bring you over into my long commentary. And I'm not even talking about from a dollars and cents standpoint, because I have multiple businesses. I had a CBD business, and so I've made money in that area. So I've done a lot of different things, always leveraging my name. So, I mean, I go back to what I would give somebody for advice. If they'd say to me, how do you, my God, you live on the water and it's this and this, how did you do it? I'd say I'd made people trust me. They trust me. So, I'll give you an example.
Without being a con man, right? You don't make people trust you. You give them a reason to trust you, and then you show them that they can trust you through continual actions ongoing. But anyways, keep going. I wanted to put that out there, because otherwise
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. I mean, again, I'm sure I'll share a number, not to brag, but so this way the people listening, if I can encourage them to think a certain way or to take certain action. So con man is never an option, right? So it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to lose it. So I will not, I mean, when I got my job at Newsmax, he was doing his commercials different than Fox. So Fox, obviously, go to commercial break, you got the commercials running or whatever comes back. At Newsmax in the beginning, he was having us read the commercials like podcasts do right now, right? You read a commercial, you do a read. And I said, I'm not doing any of your reads. I don't use any of those products. I don't use any of those services. I will only do reads for something I use. And he's like, I said, get somebody else to do it, or I'm not doing the show.
Well, yeah, you should be able to use, and I say the same thing. I'm like, I want to at least research it and understand it before I promote it. Go ahead.
I've only done, when I was doing stuff with Rumble at the very beginning, they gave me one, they kept, do gold, do this, do that. And I said, look, these may be great products and services. I don't use them. I said, give me Field of Greens, because I'm into health. Field of Greens, yeah. I'll do Field of Greens.
Yeah.
And we sold so much Field of Greens that they kept on wanting to renew me. And he said, man, how are you doing this? And I said, because if I tell people I'm using Field of Greens, they're going to do it. Not because I look like I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger or Brad Pitt. It's because I'm telling you I used it. And so now, you could use it too, knowing that it's safe and I'm still not blown up, everything's okay. So when I put my name into or onto something, it has to be that I know it's good. So when I got into the CBD business, this will blow your mind. This is one number I'll share, because I think it punctuates what we're talking about, which is to be honest. So I was going through a very difficult time health-wise, aches and pains, other stuff I'm not going to tell you because it gross you out. And I was like, I need something. And every pill they gave me made it only worse. So I'm on vacation in the Bahamas shooting my 4th immigration film, which is on Amazon Prime. And so I'm there and I'm doing it. And the guy can just see I'm hurting. And he says, you ever try CBD? I said, I don't do drugs. I've never done a drug in my life. I've never even taken a hit of pot. Don't ask me to do that. He goes, it's not drugs. So he explained it to me and I took it. And within a month, the problems I was having, both internal and external, were gone. So when I was back at my house, at the time I lived in New York, I said to my wife, I said, I got to get the CBD stuff. And so I tried a couple of things and it all sucked. So I called the guy back from the Bahamas and I said, what was in that? And so he gave it to me. And I said, I got to find somebody to create my own formula because I couldn't find it here. So I called up a lab, and long story short, I said to my wife, maybe we should create DML CBD. And she's like, you want it? I said, yeah. I said, you know how many people we'd help? I didn't know if it was going to succeed or not. So I wound up getting my formula, gave it to a lab. They created it. We tested it a few times. I didn't like the way it tasted. We went back and forth. Finally, we had it perfect after a couple of months. I went on Facebook Live and I said, I just started DML CBD. This is right before COVID. So COVID hadn't hit yet, because COVID hit us in January, February, and I started this in July. So 6 months, I had nothing to, it wasn't like, hey, this will help me with COVID. I got on Facebook Live and at the time, maybe I had a couple of thousand people watching. And I said, I just launched DML CBD. And by the way, it helped me with this and this and this and this and that. Within 20 minutes, may God take me if I'm lying, we did $100,000 in business. And I looked to my wife and I said, okay, you were right. And so, and I have never, to this day, 6 years, I have never had a single complaint. There's not one complaint against us.
Wow.
Why? Because I double test everything. I make sure it's safe. I don't cut corners. I'm not a con man. I care about people's health, and people know that they can trust me. So that is part of who I am. And could I have made 10 times the money? Absolutely. Could you cut corners? Absolutely. And am I the biggest CBD company? Nope. But I'm the one who has customers coming back all the time. So that is what I have learned in business. That's what I have learned in media, is that, when you say, you look at my resume or whatever, and I look at my resume sometimes and say, that's pretty cool, but it could have been better. I could have been Bill O'Reilly. It could have been Tucker Carlson. Instead, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch.
Could it be better? Some of the people that you're comparing yourself to, I don't know, Bill O'Reilly, he can be kind of
an asshole.
He's an asshole. Yeah.
I know Bill O'Reilly. He is a rude, terrible man. So yeah, no, I didn't mean from the degree of being them. I want to be me, like you want to be you. I'm talking about from a level of success.
That's right. I agree with that. Yeah.
And
I just won't. I like my husband. You just won't be. I won't, unless the world catches up or changes to what my messaging is. I won't be. But that's just the way it is. And you can't, otherwise, maybe you will be with the shorts, but I can't sacrifice what discipline, hard work, being the type is hard. I'm not advocating the easy path. The easy path sells. The harder path, the truth, the being conviction, authenticity, that doesn't sell as much. And I'm sorry, that's what I'm going to be.
You're spot on correct, because look, go back to what even the numbers I just gave you on CBD, right? So I've built a multi-million-dollar CBD business. Go back to the story, Sarah, from when I met my wife and I left college. I didn't say I want to start a CBD business. I've made more money in CBD than I've made in media, and I fell into it. But the way that I sold $100,000 in one day was because of all the hard work I had done in media to make people trust me. And the way that I got into media was because I went out and made a film, because I lived 9/11. So, I mean, as Steve Jobs says in that speech, you got to watch that speech. You'll say, man, I'm glad I did that. You can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect the dots going backward. And so that's why when we talk about the shorts, what's it based on? I am with you. I hate the idea that people are sitting on a phone all day just scrolling up and looking for one of the most, interesting things they can. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why I wear my hat. I wear my hat because when you're going through and all of a sudden whoa, what's that? What's that hat? Why is that guy's hair like that? It's usually all over the place. Today it's tame. And it stops them. Then they listen to me speak, and then they forget about the hat. So do I like that process? Do I like the fact that our kids and even our adults are sitting there addicted to the crack on their phone? No, I don't. But if I have to choose where my fight is, where my war is, I'm not going to try to fight the TikToks and the YouTubes and the Facebooks, because they're just too damn big. So I got to play within their rule set. And I got to figure out how it is that I'm going to get what I do best, which is explain to you what's going on at the border, what's going on with Trump, what's going on with policy, how can you build a better business, and play by their rules, but with who I am as a person. And so that's my advice. It's worked for me. And I'll never leave it. That's the way if it doesn't make me feel good about who I am, if it doesn't improve my country, it doesn't, if it put it this way, God, country, family, those are those three things. If I could check all three boxes, then I do something. If I can't, then I let it go.
We'll leave it with that, because I think that's a good message. And everybody needs to be authentic to who they are. Where do people follow you then? Where's the best place now?
It's funny. I get asked that all the time. I never have a good answer. Now I finally have one. If they go to DMLCB... That's if they want CBD. Sorry. If they go to DML360.com, they can sign up for our newsletter, and that gives you the map to everything. So it's DML360.com.
Thank you so much for joining today. This was a fun conversation, so I really appreciate it.
It was, and I want to say thank you to you. I mean, you're a great host, and you ask a question and you let me answer it, and you don't cut off, and that's a rare thing. So it's something that you should be leveraging hugely.